All right, everybody, welcome back to the 30-second Drunk Friend podcast. As always, we're your host. I'm Trav, aka Nest Friend, way out there in the desert. It's Nest Drunk. Alex, how you doing, buddy?
Oh, this isn't the desert. We got snow.
Oh,
snow
that's
this
right.
week. Snow.
How did you get snow? If you had asked me if it were even possible to snow in the entire state of New Mexico, I would probably have said no.
It snowed. But it's fine because it snowed, and we have mountains out here, so of course it's going to snow. And some of the heavy weather from the mountains is going to carry over to the city. Works for me because the snow usually melts within like 48 hours of it snowing.
It's fun that, we're not even 23 seconds into this podcast. We've already brought up old man talk. We're already talking about the weather. I didn't know. I didn't think we could make it come that fast.
Let's talk about growing tomatoes.
Oh, here we go again. Tomatoes.
Yeah, there we go.
So some big news your way. You're about to transition your life. You're about to uproot and move or something. Yeah.
That's the idea. Yeah, we might be moving soon. That's my girlfriend Pearl and I, and Clyde and Ulysses and the dogs and I.
Yeah.
We might be getting a house out here soon. We've been renting for the past 5 years since we moved out here. So God, it's 2020. I just realized that now, huh?
You just realized it. Yeah, buddy. It's been 2020 for 9 years.
Imagine that. Yeah, that's what it feels like. Yeah, but I hope to get a house soon.
Cool.
That'd be cool. That'd be fun.
Yeah. Well, congrats and good luck and all that.
Thanks. It might be fun. It might suck because there's a lot of there's a lot of adulting.
Yeah.
Involved in that, and there's a lot of responsibility involved in that, and
you can do it
with those things.
Nah, you got this. You
really?
got this. Yeah. I think I don't really know you that well, but yeah, you might have it.
Come on, I'll be fine.
See, I knew you had it in you. I got you. Now I got you on my side. You're fine.
I'll have a garage.
That's all you need.
And I'll have like a workbench, and I'll be able to be like, I'll make Tim Allen sounds and stuff like that. I'll be a real man.
You just be grunting a lot and wearing flannel. I love it. Speaking of grunting a lot and wearing flannel, do you have any Halloween plans?
No, not really.
No.
We'll just be. We will have a couple of people over, just to hang out and watch some bad movies with and stuff like that. We love bad movies. We love Mystery Science Theater. We love bad horror movies and the old Hammer films with Frankenstein and Dracula and that sort of stuff.
Cool.
So that'll be fun. What about you? What plans do you have?
We're trying to salvage as many plans as possible. I think a movie is definitely in the works. I would say most of the world will probably just be watching a scary movie on Halloween night this go around. But and I don't know what movie that'll be. But we are going to try to do a thing. There's like drive-through trick-or-treating. I mean, we want to dress our little girl up. We want to, we're not going to let 2020 defeat us completely. So she wanted to be, we asked her, she's not even 2. She'll be 2 a couple weeks after Halloween. We said, what do you want to be for Halloween? Not really expecting to know what she'd say. She could have said like a clock or something. We wouldn't have been surprised. But she said she wanted to be a squeaky mouse. So we're just going to make her into a little mouse. So that'll be fun. I don't know what we're going to do with the squeaky mouse, but hopefully somebody will throw a little bit of candy at us, and that'll be good.
That's awesome. So yeah, the squeaky mouse will get, you can start a chart and a spreadsheet and be like, what does the squeaky mouse what kind of candy does that get, and then you can compare to the next year when she decides to be something else, and you can contrast and compare and do an analysis on what costumes get the most candy.
Oh, this is why you're fun at parties, I'm assuming.
Clearly.
Speaking of fun at parties, I actually don't have a good segue with that, but I was trying to move on.
You're welcome.
So, in the spirit of Halloween, you and I have both been releasing some videos on our respective channels that are a little bit in the way of monsters and that kind of stuff, trying to fit the vibes. And you released one that I always was drawn to just simply based on the cover, and even the game's art I thought looked really interesting. And that's The Adventures of Dr. Franken. But it turns out it's just not a game that has a lot of meat to it, right?
Nah, it sucks.
Yeah. Yeah, it kind of sucks. I was trying to be gingerly about it, but yeah.
It's lousy. I mean, it's not lousy, but it's just kind of blah. It's just kind of there. If there's a million platformers just like it. It's like, who cares? It's like, oh, I want my generic platformer to have a Halloween flavor. Well, here you go. Congratulations.
And that's the bummer with that one too, because I really do. I love the art. I just like when things have a Halloween flavor to it. Like you could do that with anything, and I'm already a little bit more interested than otherwise. But the fact that it kind of sucks is a bummer, and that's not a surprise either. And the art of that one always reminded me of the game Decap Attack for Genesis, which I think is slightly a better experience. But still the same idea for me is that I'm just attracted to it because it's got a scary guy on it, and scary guys are fun.
No, I'm sure Decap Attack is pretty much eons better. Not that means a whole lot than Adventures of Dr. Franken. You're gonna do pretty well with Decap Attack. Decap Attack's not that great, but it has its charm.
Yeah, I mean, at least it has some individuality to it. It has some unique things going for
sure.
it. Yeah. Speaking of eons better, I'm all about segues today. Speaking of eons better than Dr. Franken, I did a video on Kid Dracula, which is a fantastic game.
My goodness.
Fantastic game that didn't make its way to North America originally. You can obviously access it through any number of different ways now. There's Castlevania collections you can play it on, etc. And it's not the exact same as the Game Boy game, but it's very close. And it's a lot cheaper if you want the real thing. But yeah, Kid Dracula, what a fun time, man. I enjoyed it, and it was actually when I got my EverDrive so that I could record and get some stuff from Famicom games for the channel. That was really the game that I was thinking about the whole time.
Konami is very strange in that they make fun of themselves. They're very eager to make fun of themselves, seemingly. Where it's like, okay, we made Castlevania and all this stuff. Okay, now we need to put our tongue firmly in cheek, and now we need to do Kid Dracula. And it's like, nobody asked you to do that. Yeah, I think the developers are just kind of sick of working on it. And the same thing happened with Gradius, where it's like we're sick of working on Gradius. Okay, let's do Parodius and make fun of ourselves and make fun of the stuff we made. And they did at least one other thing like that. I just can't think of it right now.
That's a good point, though. The self-parodization, if that's a term.
Yeah.
You don't see that a lot with a lot of developers. I wonder, too, with Kid Dracula, if it's just an attempt to make it a kid-friendly game. The Castlevania series was really dark and brooding, and maybe it was a way to introduce kids to it more. I mean, I can't suspect that's a really high priority on their list, but perhaps, I don't know. But it is neat.
Yeah, I have no idea. That would be my guess, though. I really think it boils down to they just can't help themselves. They just can't. They can't help themselves. They're just like, oh God, we're so pent up with this garbage. We've got so many inside jokes that we can't hold them in, and so we've got to, all this Kid Dracula stuff and Castlevania stuff. Let's pour it all into this Kid Dracula game, and it's very funny. Kid Dracula does have quite a bit going for it on its own. It's not just an inside joke within the Konami developers. It's a really good game on its own.
Yeah, absolutely.
Both for Famicom and for Game Boy, I would say.
Yeah, 100% agree. And speaking of Castlevania, I haven't seen we're recording this on a Wednesday. This is going to come out tomorrow, but you have a Castlevania related video also.
Yeah, I want to quit doing regular videos for just one episode, I guess, is the way to phrase that.
It sounded like it was going to be darker than that.
Oh, it's going to be dark. Oh, God, no, I'm going to quit forever. Not that anybody would care, but
I would a little bit.
I wanted to do Super Castlevania 4 LP just because the way I start this video is like, okay, so Adventures of Dr. Franken wasn't a recommendation. There's not many more new games or new ROM hacks, for that matter, that I can recommend for Halloween games. So why don't I just do an LP for a game that a lot of people like? So that's what I'll do for this coming Thursday. I did a Super Castlevania 4 LP, and I also took the opportunity to make sure it was a collaboration with a former guest.
Yeah.
For DrunkFriend, and that's our friend Layla from she's not from New Zealand, but she lives in New Zealand. She was able to paint a Castlevania themed painting, and it's wonderful. It's brilliant, and it's going to be part of a giveaway.
That's such a good idea, man.
Oh, it was her idea. It was all her idea.
Oh, wow. Cool.
And so, yeah, so she was like, hey, let's do this Castlevania thing, and I'll paint something that's kind of Halloween themed, Castlevania themed, and you'll do, you'll like make it a giveaway on your channel since you have more people. I was like, okay. And sure enough, she already has a video on her channel showing how she created this painting, and it's very soothing. It's very soothing, and it's very, for sure.
I'm excited for it. Again, by the time this comes out, everyone will have already watched that video, and I'm over here just clamoring to see it because you've been sort of talking to me about it. I've seen no details or anything like that. So I'm super stoked to check it out, man. And I look forward to more stuff like this. I like collaborative Alex. He's fun.
There will be more collaborative stuff in November for sure.
Heck yeah, dude. All right, let's get into some emails. First off here, we have one from Austin. Hello, Austin. He says, hey, Travis, I learned about you and your channel from this podcast since I'm not a big NES guy, but I'm now subscribed and enjoying your smooth voice. Thanks for all the hard work, sir. You're welcome, Austin. I hope this is smooth enough for you. And then he goes on to say, hey, Alex.
You went into Clint Eastwood voice there.
That's a character I need to add to my Tales of the Lesser Medium repertoire.
My goodness.
He goes on. He says, hey, Alex, I've been subscribed to your channel since 2015 and enjoy all the hard work you put in showing off the Super Nintendo. I know you've been feeling the burnout lately. I started a personal project at the beginning of the year to play the entire SNES library. I'm about 400 games in. I give each game at least 50 to 30 minutes typically. And some of my favorite new discoveries are Arkanoid, Don't It Again, Bushi Seryuden, made by Game Freak, and the recently translated God RPG, which has become one of my favorite RPGs. There's always some new great games to play under the piles of Mahjong games. Take care of yourself, and thanks for the years of work. Then he gets to some questions down here. He says, what licensed property would have taken a game to a whole new level? Example, King of Monsters with the Godzilla license, Soldiers of Fortune with an A-Team license, or Shoot 'em Up with X-Wings. So let's answer that question first, and actually if you want to react to anything he said up there ahead, you could do that too. But do you have any examples of a licensed property that could have taken a game to a whole new level?
I think he nails it with the X-Wings. With if we can do a Star Fox game with X-Wings, are you kidding me? Like, that'd be freaking awesome. Granted, that actually exists, and that's kind of a thing on PC back in the day. But yeah, that'd be super fun. I like his examples a lot with Godzilla, with King of the Monsters, and
that's a good one. That's a really good one.
Yeah, Soldiers of Fortune with A-Team would be awesome too. Or True Lies with other Arnold movies, I think, would work really well. If you could do Predator with True Lies format, where you're in the jungle and you're just, or even do like a Jurassic Park style game, except Predator, where you're wandering around in the jungle. That'd be awesome. That's all I got, pretty much. What about you? You got any ideas?
I don't have anything super serious. I was thinking you could put Danzig in the Mother series, and you could do that one. Mother, yeah, you could. I don't know what he would do, but
my goodness,
that's all I had. It's not good. I'm sorry. I'll just quit the show. I'll quit the show.
I think that's pretty good.
Okay.
When he says "mother" in the second verse, it sounds like he's saying Obama.
Does it really? I'll have to listen to that after this.
No, it does. I don't mean to be political, but it really does sound like he's saying Obama. It sounds like he's saying Obama.
Yeah, I can hear that too. Now I think it's affected that song for the rest of my life. I appreciate that.
And my girlfriend and I were like, "Did he just say Obama?" And it's like, yeah, that was.
He was ahead of his time. You can say that about him.
He was ahead of his time. Yeah. Was it Michelle Obama or Barack Obama? We don't know.
You can't know. You can't possibly know. Yeah. He goes on to ask, what is the most 90s movie to ever 90s? His pick is Surf Ninjas.
My pick is always going to be something like, what is that movie called? The one with Keanu Reeves and Patrick Swayze.
Point Break.
Point Break, yeah.
Yeah.
That one it's got surfing. It's got Keanu Reeves shouting. It's got I am an FBI agent, and it's so bad. There's a lot of hilariousness and 90s-ness. I think it's got what's her name? Petty, Corey Petty, whatever her name is. I can't remember her name. God, I'm so bad with names. I can see her face in my head.
You can later in this episode, you name 18 baseball players no one remembers. I just want to point that out.
Oh, God. I can't remember her name. But I can remember Tim Salmon. He was the 1993 Rookie of the Year for the Anaheim Angels, or the California Angels at the time.
Yeah, you can't forget the fish. Big Tim.
Big Tim.
Clueless is one that I would pick. I think that's got a very 90s feel to it all the way around. But I think we're picking some good stuff here.
Very much so, yeah.
Okay. He finishes up. He says, thanks again, gentlemen. Love the show and have a great week, Austin. Thank you, Austin. Love hearing from you.
So we got another email from Ryan. He says, hey, dudes. Love the pod. It was cool to hear Travis's PhD in human-computer interfaces and his work on transportation, as I happen to have worked as an automotive engineer on the same stuff.
Huh.
And he says, parenthetical, not to be creepy, but I guess he must be at Virginia Tech.
Yes, sir.
Anywho, small world and all that, I was wondering if Travis has an expert human factors opinion on video game controllers.
Oh, man.
Either the best or worst designs. I love this question. I'm sure Alex would have a non-expert opinion as well. And what are your... he does make a good point. You have a educated engineer's opinion, on what would be the quintessential designed controllers. What are they?
I think you can't go wrong. I think the NES controller is just perfect. You know, it's the best system. It's the best controller. No, I'm messing. I was just hoping that your jaw would drop and you'd get really upset with me. No, I think, obviously the more modern you go, the better that stuff's going to be. They put there's been a ton of science from day one to get to that point, and it seems silly in some way to think that they're just scientists staring at hands for the last 20 or 30 years, but they've been out there. They've been doing it. But at some point, there's like a pinnacle where there's no changes that you could really make to a form or a form factor that's going to do things much better than what they've been doing for the last 20 odd years. I think the PlayStation controller sort of, I don't want to say revolutionized, but it sort of set the standard for what a lot of consoles strive to be right around the early 2000s, maybe late 90s, like that form factor. And it's only been improved on a little bit at a time. What's changed mostly is just how reliable they are and how sturdy they feel. And so at some point there's just preference to where you like your joystick. And that's not really an ergonomic issue as much as it is just a personal preference. Like, I think even the GameCube controllers are really well-designed controller for the system that it was made for. So I think, just in general, things that are more modern over the last 10 years is just probably as good as it's going to get. I think the only innovations you'll get in controllers going forward will be things like haptic feedback or things like connectivity and motion censoring and all that stuff. But in terms of fit and feel, I think it's just any of the modern stuff. It's hard to separate it. Worst, though, I mean, I'm just not a huge fan of that N64 controller. I've never, in all of my days as an ergonomist, I've yet to see anybody with 18 knuckles on one hand. So it's not that great.
You don't like grabbing an elephant's face? What's wrong with you?
I don't.
Your words.
It seems
right
rude.
There.
It seems rude. What's your uninformed take on this?
Super Nintendo controller, obviously. I mean,
it is good. It does feel good.
Better. I got to go with the PS2 controller. Was the first one that felt just perfect. The DualShock, the twin sticks, and all that sort of stuff with everything was the first controller I remember feeling like this is how a controller should feel. This is exactly right. And everybody's just been trying to catch up with that one, in my opinion. I do like the original Super Nintendo controller. Even like the thing I like about the Super Nintendo controller is that even the third-party stuff still works with it, like the ASCII pad, the stuff with the turbo switches and all that, where it still works no matter what you do, and I love that about that controller. It still feels really well. The NES controller is brilliant for its time. Like beyond brilliant for its time. It's revolutionary. Like it was.
Yeah, I mean that's a good point. Yeah,
incredible, but at the same time, it wasn't ergonomically, ahead of its time or anything like that.
No, I don't think ergonomics were a thing. They just made square molds and said, "Can you hold this?" And you could, and that was it. Yeah,
right.
Yeah,
no, just having the D-pad on the left with your left thumb and buttons on your right thumb as that's become a thing now with people. It's become without saying now,
yeah.
Which is really strange to think about now, where they could have potentially done it the other way. Can you imagine that?
Oh man. Oh, we would all be
like, what
would that have opened up the not dark timeline that we're on now? Do you think?
Really strange. I don't know.
Is that where Berenstain broke? Was right there.
What if we had D-pads on the right thumb? Can you imagine? Like, just take a second to imagine that.
I just don't want to.
Think about using a D-pad with your right thumb.
I don't like it.
And it's like, how? I know, right? Like, how does that happen? Like, how did they know to like, okay, like D-pad, left thumb, yes, this works.
Even thinking about it right now is like delaying my speech. Like just trying to think about it, I'm having a hard time talking about it. That's how incredible that is. That does it for our emailed questions. So thanks so much, Ryan and Austin. We definitely appreciate it. And if you guys have questions,
is that all we got? That's all we got. Come on, send more questions.
Yeah, send them in.
More.
Yeah, send them in.
Ryan, send 10 more questions.
Ryan, we need 10 from you. We also need you to pretend that you're 9 other people. Because
Austin, send more questions.
Please.
Okay? Yeah, does that sound good? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, guys. DrunkFriendPodcast@gmail.com, in case you've forgotten. Let's get into the guest, though. Some of that guest meat. This is why people are here. They saw the name of the episode, and they were like, all right, I got to suffer through 25 minutes of these assholes talking about controllers before we even get to anything good. So coming up, we have Jenovi. He's known on YouTube for exploring the depths of some of the more, what we might consider obscure retro gaming libraries like the CDI. But he does a really good job. He does all kinds of like unreleased game stuff. He digs into, one of my favorite videos is actually, I didn't even talk about it in this episode, but it was about disc rot. I learned so much about disc rot. I'm paranoid now. So a lot of informative stuff from Jenovi.
Yeah, he's an extremely fun and multi-talented guest. He's got all sorts of reviews, very strange stuff that you don't think about every day.
Yeah.
It's normally stuff you think about with like, AVGN episodes, and it's like, hey, wait a second. These systems aren't a joke. These systems are actually pretty good. Well, kind of. But some of them are.
They're interesting at the very least.
Listen, if you're going to stick around for anything, stick around for this dude's auctioneering. This dude is amazing. He's multi-talented. And stick around for Jenovi.
Yes. All right, we are excited today to be talking to Jenovi. Jenovi, man, thanks for coming on the show. We really appreciate it. How are you doing?
Man, I'm doing fantastic, and I really appreciate the invite. So thank you for having me on. I'm a longtime listener of this podcast.
Oh, wow. The first of ever. The first ever.
Yeah, it's pretty wild because I found out about Trav's channel and I started watching it, and then I discovered that he actually did a podcast. So I started checking out this podcast, and obviously Trav has this guest host named Alex, and I'm thinking, well, I don't know who this Alex guy is, but he sounds pretty cool. And so I listened to like about 10, and I keep on hearing that he has this show called SNES Drunk. And I'm thinking, okay, well, I probably at some point need to go and check this show out because this guy seems like he's all right. And I go and look him up on YouTube, and like, wow, how have I never heard of this guy? His channel's kind of big. And I checked out a couple of your videos, and they were really good. I definitely can understand why you have the sub count that you do. And I was shocked that I knew who Trav was, and he had a very small channel, and never had heard of you really.
Well, no, that's very humbling. Because normally I'm the one joking about Trav, being, it's like the big star, but now Trav really is the big star.
He really is,
and I'm just an also ran.
That's right.
So here you go, Trav. Why don't you show some shine here and flex a bit here?
Well, and you're welcome. I've led a lot of people to your channel, obviously, and so
it's true.
That's
awesome. I love it. Another subscriber. Thank
No,
God.
it is actually pretty crazy. A few people have told me, they're like, man, it's crazy. I didn't hear about SNES Drunk until your podcast. And I was like, well, I don't know how that's possible. But obviously, Alex was a heavy inspiration for my channel. So there you go. But we do appreciate having you on. And I think, it's worth mentioning that you did find my channel. I want to give a shout out to our friend Top Spot, who we've had on here in the past, who made that connection. And so that's always fun. So we're kind of also in the business here with DrunkFriend of helping other creators get noticed and perhaps be introduced to a new audience, certainly our audience, because we like what you do over there with your channel. And we're going to be talking about that today.
Thank you.
So we appreciate it.
Thanks. Yeah, and I absolutely love the whole entire purpose behind this show here, and so many of the people that you've had on as guests are people that I highly admire, and there's been a number of people I've never even heard of. So, I like being introduced to people through this format and being able to go in and explore the creative side of these people on the backside of a podcast. I think it's really fantastic.
Thanks, man. Well, let's get into what Jenovi does best, and your channel is you in general are pretty interesting because I think there are a few obvious reasons for that. One being that typically as gamers and as content creators in the gaming space, if you're not showing your face, you're usually, or if you are showing your face, you're typically showing like a big wall behind you with video games on them, and it's just you got to show off the shelves. There's always that shelfy aspect of it all. But you're a little bit different. You don't always go team face, and that's what we've coined here as team face, team no face. So Alex and I would be team no face. You've been a little bit team face recently, but the thing is your backdrop's a little bit different because it seems to me you're doing a lot of, or at least when you lived at your previous place, you're out on a ranch. You're doing some other things that are not typically associated with gaming. So I think that's pretty interesting. Can you explain a little bit about like how you balance that aspect of things where you're I guess a rancher or a farmer and you're also a nerd like us?
Yeah. Well, and I think you'll find that there's quite a few people that are into really interesting industries that are also into gaming. It wasn't obviously popular to be into gaming back in the 80s and 90s, for the most part, early 90s. But it's something I've always had a strong passion for. When I was growing up, my dad had a small arcade. We always had computers and video game systems in the house, so it's something I grew up with. I've been passionate about video games my entire life. I've also been very passionate about animals and the ag industry as a whole, and that's where I've spent my entire career. So yeah, it's definitely a interesting mix because you just don't see a whole lot of people that live out in the country or that are involved in that, which also are heavily involved in video games. But I do know some people that are, world-renowned horse trainers, which also play video games. And I know some other people that farm as well, which are into games. And I have a couple people who follow my channel, which I've made a connection with, that farm, and we talk shop outside of games. So we'll talk about growing grass hay or farm equipment or whatnot. So yeah, it's definitely something that you probably would not expect. But I don't know if it really differentiates me personally so much from anybody else as far as just my interest in the hobby goes. But definitely maybe my perspective on life and the way I approach stuff is definitely impacted by what I do for a living and the way I live my life.
Very cool. That's really cool. Your channel covers a lot of games and systems that nobody really talks about, which is really cool, which I really like. You're talking about the CDI and the 3DO and stuff like that, Atari Jaguar. What is it about those consoles that appeals to you?
Yeah, well, I just have, I think this is something that probably a lot of people don't realize about me is I just have a pure passion for video games in general. So I'm probably known as being kind of a 32X fanatic, But when I think about the 32X, I'm not sure that there is a 32X game that would be in my top 10 all time, but I definitely have a lot of love and appreciation for that system and for a lot of these other systems that I feel are underappreciated. And I think it's just really easy for me to look at a piece of hardware and find positive aspects about it. And the fact that a lot of this stuff is just really undercovered, or when people cover it, it's just a big bash fest, or they're not really doing it justice, in my opinion, is a driving factor for me to go out and try to present it in a proper light. And I think that I've been successful in doing that with a number of things. And you don't always change people's minds, even if you are presenting, these detailed videos with facts and you're citing your resources, because it's just some of the ideology behind some of this hardware is so ingrained in people's just in who they are, you're never going to change minds. And but for me, it's really just about exploring and telling these stories that are seldom told. Excuse me.
No worries. Yeah, no, it's the 32X. Since you brought it up, that's one of those things where it's like, oh, the 32X was the precipice of what brought Sega down, and I always find that confusing, because I remember that certain Christmas when I was a kid, when 32X was like a huge deal, and that it was sold out and nobody could get one.
That's right.
And that sort of thing. Can you help dispel the whole 32X thing? I mean, you've done it in videos, but
yeah, and actually I just did a panel on it as well. That's actually
nice.
That was that LI Retro. I think you and I both did panels for them. That's the first time I've ever done a panel, and I know that's the first time you've ever done a panel. So it was pretty awesome.
I was very nervous, and
me as well.
I don't think I'd do the online thing again, but yeah, it was pretty cool.
Yeah. So with the 32X, it's just like you said. They produced around 660,000 units, and they completely sold out. They have pre-orders for about 1 million, and this is in '94. It was declared the Christmas gift of the year in '94, and retailers just going to get their hands on them. So the number that's typically stated as the number of 32X units that were shipped worldwide for the entirety of the lifespan of the hardware is actually the number that was shipped at launch. So we don't actually know how many total units actually made it into consumers' hands, because it's just never been revealed. And what ends up happening is that the 32X is sharing a lot of chipsets with the Saturn, and the Saturn has this very, very disastrous launch in the United States here, where they can't get chipsets, and they're splitting chipsets between the Saturn and the 32X, and they launch it early and they don't send it out to stores. I actually grew up in rural Oregon, and the Saturn was a system that I never seen on store shelves the entirety of that system's life. Never seen games for it, never seen the system on store shelves. And when you start talking to people that grew up in these rural areas, it's very true, because a lot of these small stores felt burned by Sega, and they refused to carry that hardware, and it really affected Sega going forward. So what ends up happening is that Sega panics, and they feel like the United States is really their marketplace where they are going to either succeed or fail. So they pull all resources from everything, and they cancel the Genesis, the 32X, the Sega CD, they cancel the Game Gear, they cancel the Pico, and they put all the resources into trying to save the Saturn. But it's just too late. They've already dropped the ball. And, the Saturn a lot of times will be described as this system that killed Sega as a company. And that simply isn't true either, because Sega had never actually experienced any kind of success in their homeland of Japan. And with the launch of the Saturn, that actually changed. And so the Saturn was actually extremely profitable and successful in Japan. And overall, throughout the lifespan of the Saturn, Sega actually remained profitable throughout that 94, 95, 96, 97, and up through 98, which a lot of people don't realize. So they weren't actually hemorrhaging money, but there is some other issues that actually go hand in hand with the Saturn and Sega of America, which really undermined Sega of Japan as far as profitability goes. But that's a whole nother bag of worms But I think we can definitively state that the 32X was a success for the time it was on the market, and that it really had nothing to do with the downfall of Sega.
Nice. It's almost like you've given a panel on this before. That was a very informed response.
Yeah, yeah. Sorry about that.
No, it's very good. Speaking of well-researched answers, that's actually a very good segue because I really love your unreleased games series, and I think this kind of touches on what you said before about how things like the Saturn just weren't available in rural areas. I was a rural boy too. I wasn't a farmer, but I might as well have been. I lived adjacent to a farm, and I was on a big rural gravel road, and nobody that I knew had a 32X or Sega CD or a Saturn or any of that stuff, and the rental store didn't have it, and as far as I knew, it was just a myth made up in magazines. And so I have this really strong fascination with all of those, that entire, I guess, I don't know what you would call it, but that section of the 90s when things were going towards CDs. Other than the PS1, I didn't see any of that stuff. So I'm really fascinated in hearing not only about the games that are out there, but certainly the ones that didn't make it to shelves. Like that's just another frontier that I haven't really tapped into. And your video series does a great job sort of showing that stuff, and I'm really fascinated by it. So how does that research process work? I know you stayed up front in a lot of the videos that like you're going to try to cover them in alphabetical order, but some might sneak in, some you might not know exist, could be out there that could be added later and that kind of stuff. But what's that research process like? Is it as arduous as it seems like it would be?
Yeah, well, I think just about every video I do is just it just consumes an incredible amount of time to put together. But for those videos in particular, they're a little different because essentially what it requires is going into gaming magazines about a year before a system launches, and then looking through gaming magazines until about the end of the life cycle of a system, and then combing through every single article that you can through any magazine that I have access to, and pulling out a list of any game that's mentioned, and then cross-referencing that against a list of games that have released. And some systems like the Jag already know what the library looks like, the Genesis, so it's a little easier. Some of them I'm not so familiar with, so I put them into a spreadsheet, and then I start listing resources for every single game. So any game that I've talked about, I actually have documented in a spreadsheet with all the resources and where it was mentioned, and any kind of information I can find out about it. So it's critical for me to be able to talk about it, that we can actually confirm that a game was actually in development or was planned, or exactly where was it? Was it just rumored? Were they talking about it? Because if that was the case, then it's not really worth discussing, because it wasn't really a reality. Could it have been a reality at that point? Probably not. So it's very important, at least for me personally, to verify that these games that we're going to be discussing have either entered some stage of the development process, whether that is just storyboards, or whether you actually have some sort of alpha or proof of concept, like a Conan on the Jag, or a little bit further along, like finished games like Bound High on the Virtual Boy.
Right. And how often are you able to? I mean, I forgive me, I haven't watched every single video in that series, but how often are you able to come across any like footage of gameplay or anything like that? Have you ever looked up and found some good archival stuff that you can show off?
Very rarely. It really depends on the game. If it's dumped, obviously it's no problem. I just go and get a copy of a dumped copy and play the game myself and capture my own footage. Otherwise, though, you're trying to look through Space World videotapes and E3 if the game is late enough in history, you might be looking through press conferences and just anything you can try to find, and you're combing through and you're making a list of what's on there. And sometimes things pop up. There was Rayman was planned for the 32X. That was going to be it was supposed to be simultaneously released on the 32X and Jag. That's the systems it was being developed for, and everybody knew that. But a lot of people have doubted for a long time that it was ever really in development for the 32X, because no footage was known to exist. And so I put those out, and there's a guy named Pandemonium. Are you familiar with him?
Yeah, I'm familiar with that one. Yeah.
Yeah. So he actually reached out to me, and he's actually done a video on it. But he was researching Saturn games and came across some footage on some old tape where some guys walking through, and they're in this 32X section, and there is Rayman, a big 32X display with Rayman running on the 32X. So the game has never been dumped. It's never been found. but there's video footage, video proof. Another one that we covered was Clay Fighter. A lot of people doubted that game existed. But there's definitely definitive proof that it did. It was under development, but nothing was known to exist. And then all of a sudden, about a year after that video came out, somebody found the ROM. It's been dumped online. So there you have it. So it's very interesting trying to track this stuff down because people never thought that anybody would care about this stuff. And a lot of times when these companies went under, these companies, especially like over in Eastern Europe, the stuff just went to a dumpster and that was the end of it. And these files were lost forever.
So have you heard of the book that has come out recently from Bitmap Books, if you're familiar with them? They did a recent release about unreleased games called The Games That Weren't. And they've got a boatload of information and like screenshots and stuff like that. Have you seen any of that stuff yet?
I have not. There was a website that documents a lot of that stuff, and I know that they have released a book. I'm not familiar with it, though. I don't typically rely on that website as a resource.
This is just my excuse to pimp Bitmap Books because they're freaking fantastic. I really like their stuff, and yeah, the stuff that they put out is really good. No, that's when I watch your unreleased video game stuff. That's what I think of is what they put out. Yeah, and it's on the same level where I'm always learning something. I'm always thinking of things that the Shadow for Super Nintendo is the one that sticks out for me. I'm not sure if you've talked about that one, but
No, tell me a little bit about it.
Oh, no, it's based on the movie with Alec Baldwin. It's not great, but the game seemed kind of sort of promising, at least in terms of a licensed platformer. It looked okay, but in kind of like a Batman Returns motif where somebody gets smashed into windows, you use the background and that sort of thing. A bit of a beat 'em up.
Yeah, I think it was also planned to come out on the Atari Jaguar CD, so that's an obscure enough console for Jenovi to maybe look at it,
Atari Jaguar CD, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
I do have one of those. So
Really?
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
They're nothing special, but you have to be very careful talking about Jag stuff because a lot of the Jag community is, they're easily offended.
Really? I was just about to ask you if you and the 10 other people that own an Atari Jaguar CD get together every year.
No, yeah, you don't want to say anything bad about the Jag CD because they will come after you.
Wow. All right. Sorry about that, Jaguar fans. Hope you're doing well.
Please come after us. We need the attention. I'm just kidding.
And we're talking about all the research that you put into your videos, but I think the one that I'm thinking of that really blew me away, and just in terms of the amount of effort that no doubt you had to put into it, but also the final product was amazing. I'm talking about your F1 documentary. And
oh my goodness, you sat through that?
I did. Of course I did. I do my research around here.
I sent it to my dad. My dad's a big F1 fan.
Yeah, I mean, I even posted it on Reddit because I was like, this is a woefully underviewed video. And of course, I got downvoted to oblivion and nobody watched it, but I tried. And
that's Reddit for you, right?
I tried. And
you can't share any, unless you're just like sharing pictures of your game room wall, you're not going to get upvotes there.
Oh, that's true. Or you just share a picture of one game and say, hey, I'm 12 and just started collecting today. And then people will give you a bunch of upvotes for some reason.
Yeah, that's true as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, look at this hidden gem that I found. Oh my goodness, it's Super Mario Brothers.
Too true. But yeah, are you planning to do any more deep dives like that one? I know that had to take, just based on your video release frequency during that period, I can tell that it took you a lot of time and effort.
Yeah, that was hundreds of hours put that together. I don't think so. Not at that kind of scale. Like I'm working on a video right now that I have a lot of hours into. It's Did Piracy Kill the Dreamcast is what it's called. But it's not the scope of my Senna video. The Senna video is definitely a passion project, and I had a lot of things I really wanted to explore. And there's something about investing, 200 or 300 hours of your life into a project like that, only to have it be one of your least viewed videos on your whole channel. It's a little heartbreaking, and it's not about the revenue for me. It's just, but you hate to invest so much time and have nobody really watch it, So
yeah.
I think we've been there where, I had to put together a portfolio for my, a video portfolio to represent my crappy, useless associate's degree for my school. And that took, I don't know how long that took, but it took forever to put together. Nobody gave a shit, and it just ended up, just dying on the floor. And I remember sending videotapes to people. This is like in 2000, 2001. I'm mailing videotapes to these editing, companies or whatever. I'm like, here's what I can do, blah, blah, blah. I know how to use After Effects 1.0 or whatever. These crappy computers, and nobody cares. And it always sucks to not get any sort of response at all. And now I think that's more raw than ever because you're on YouTube. It's a more public thing. And it's like, well here you go, world. And, you're releasing it to the world instead of mailing it to a single person. And when the world doesn't respond, then it feels more personal.
Yeah, well, it's like the feedback I received from that video was overwhelmingly positive. I don't think I've ever received so much love from a video. And even just cruising around Portland when Portland was last going on, I had so many people come up and talk about that video, and that was fantastic.
Nice.
That felt great, just having these people just tell me how that video connected with them.
Well, that's good.
On the flip side, as a creator, you upload a video and you have like this expectation of, okay, well, even if YouTube doesn't promote this, it's going to go out to my subs, and at least like 20% of my subs are probably going to watch this. And that wasn't the case with that video. So it had like an extremely low retention rate, and very few of my subs watched it. So that's where the disappointment really kind of came in. I think it's kind of hard to not necessarily be disappointed when something like that happens, because, we are creating for, a lot of us are creating for different reasons. For me, it's primarily for myself, but also to share my vision and my stories and my passion with other people. And so, when you have a lot of heart and time into a project like that, and you don't feel like it's, like it's well received, but it's not well viewed, it doesn't necessarily feel as good as it could. I think you guys probably understand where I'm coming from, even if I'm not articulating it correctly.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like, it's not like an unfounded whininess that I see a lot of times with creators that sort of preemptively like, I spent, 30 hours on this video and YouTube better share it. And it's like, well, the first step is that, it doesn't really matter how much time you spend on it. It has to be good. But that's not the case here, because what you've created is something that, when I was flipping through it, and I was like, does Jenovi, I know you have your hand in like a lot of different pots, but I was like, is he also like a Netflix documentarian or something? Like, this seems like it's a very well practiced thing. It was very well put together. I was extremely impressed, even though, I don't know the first thing about F1. I can spell it. That's about it. But
I think it's probably just the nature of the subject. It's just niche.
Yeah.
Well, I was on that video. One disappointing thing is that I guess I mispronounced his first name throughout the whole video. And so I get like people, I just got a message today actually like, hey, the video was fantastic. It was incredible, but it's clear that you didn't watch F1 because you're mispronouncing his name the whole time. And it's really hard to watch because of that, even though the rest of it was fantastic. I'm thinking, well, the problem is like, I didn't grow up with TV. So everything I read in magazines, so a lot of times I'm mispronouncing things because I've never heard them pronounced. And like for that video, I wasn't really, he's from Brazil, so they speak Portuguese there. And then the focus was on Japan. So all the videos and stuff I'm looking at were from Japan, and I'm sending them over to people to get these documents and these videos translated so I can try to tell more of the story I'm wanting to tell. And you don't like really ever, at least for me, I'm not like really coming across his first name being pronounced. So I'm like, I guess I butcher it the whole entire time throughout the video. And that's like a little bit of a letdown, but I mean, that's just a reality when, when you're growing up, and the way that you're consuming media back in the 80s is wholly different than the way you can consume it today. You guys always talk about sports, and I'm a sports fanatic, but I mean, the reality was growing up, it was all through newspapers. I collected cards, and I had books and newspapers,
Sure.
and I wasn't able to watch this stuff on TV. Everything I could tell you about any player. I collected the cards. I never got to watch games though. So yeah, it's a wholly different experience than what a lot of other people had.
It plays out in your imagination instead, where when you see Barry Bonds, Bobby Bonilla for the Pittsburgh Pirates against the Atlanta Braves with Sid Bream chugging home, in the '92 NLCS. I don't know why that popped into my head.
Yeah.
I guess I'm always thinking about Sid Bream, but that's one of those indelible images I'll always remember as a kid was Sid Bream chugging around third, and he's so slow. He's like the slowest guy. He's like a dad bod. He looks like Bob from Bob's Burgers. Honest to God, he is the. I just realized that right now. Like
That's
he
amazing.
is the real life version of Bob from Bob's Burgers, and he's chugging around third, and he's so slow. And Barry Bonds' throw from left is just a hair off, and Mike Lavalier his tag is just off. And like, how are you supposed to piece that together? But that's how it worked, going as far back as several decades, through newspaper articles, through box scores and that sort of stuff. So
Yeah, I mean,
I hear you.
I mean, that's exactly how I consumed all this stuff too. And moving up to modern times, I've obviously been able to finally go to live games, and I've been able to watch the stuff on TV. But growing up, it just wasn't a reality for me. And it's not to say that I didn't get to occasionally watch something. Like, I got to watch the Blue Jays win the World Series. When was that? Like '91, and I watched the Twins and Kirby Puckett win the World Series.
Nice.
But those were the exception. That wasn't the rule for me. It was.
So are you a big Blazers fan then?
No. The only team I'm really passionate about is the Mariners. Otherwise,
Mariners. Okay. Oh gosh, I'm so sorry.
That's okay.
They've really suffered the past 20 years or so.
Yeah, and it really is video games that has me so passionate about the Mariners, because Nintendo owned them. So I felt like, as a video game fan, you were actually doing yourself a disservice if you actually weren't supporting the Mariners. And I still kind of feel like that to this day, that if you love video games, or if you love Nintendo, that you really should be loving the Mariners, because that just that connection is incredible. It's an incredible story.
Absolutely. Well, I love Ken Griffey Jr. presents Major League Baseball. It's my favorite sports game of all time, and it will be until I'm on my deathbed.
Wait, hold on. What about Baseball Stars on the NES?
No, Griffey Baseball. Give me Griffey Baseball every time.
Excellent. I was really worried we weren't going to be able to resurrect this conversation and bring it back to video games, which you guys managed to do.
Come on.
I had one job. I was ready to jump in, but you guys did it yourselves. I'm really proud, to be quite honest.
Well, you are welcome. We could talk sports games all you like. Those are always a pleasure with me.
So you're not taking Seattle,
Here we go.
the Seahawks every time in a Tecmo Super Bowl or anything like that?
I'm more interested in specific players. There's people that I really get behind, and so I think baseball is about the only sport. I mean, association football, I really like the Rangers out of Scotland. That's probably another exception, but for the most part, I just really enjoy following specific players. I'm speaking as somebody who never really got to watch sports on TV. I'll tell you a story about myself that I think is kind of interesting and outside of the norm. Back in the 90s, when I was in high school, I had a good friend that was playing basketball, and he needed a new pair of shoes. So he comes up to me and he asked me if I'd be willing to buy his newly purchased PlayStation 1 from him so he can go and buy a pair of Jordans. So I asked him, and at this time, this is like, I'm probably 14 or 15 years old. And actually, I have a job working at a video store and a pizza place at the time after school. So I had money. I'm like probably one of the few people in school that actually have a job and has money. So I asked him how much the Jordans are, and he says $200. I was like, yeah, I'll do that. So I get this PlayStation 1. There's like 15 games with it, 2 controllers, 2 memory cards, just a steal of a deal at the time.
Whoa, yeah.
And this is like back when they're all in the long form cardboard boxes. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, yeah.
So I mean, the system just literally came out. I think it's like in '95, and I go home and I play through everything. And there's one game called Game Day in that stack, and I know nothing about football. I've never seen it, never even kept up to on it as far as box scores go, newspapers and whatnot. And so after I burn through all the games, this is the one game I have left, and I go ahead and throw it in one night, and I fall in love with this game. I think it's just like one of the greatest games I've ever played. And since then, I've fallen in love with football. But Game Day is not alone, but it is the first game that ever introduced me to a sport and taught me how a sport works. And there's so Golf is the same way. Tennis is the
Wow.
same way. Soccer is the same way. I knew nothing about them, but I picked up the games and started playing them. The games were fantastic. And so it's like everything I know about most sports, save basketball and baseball, is because of video
Interesting.
games. And I'm not so
Wow.
sure that a lot of other people can say that, but I have a
Yeah.
passion for those video games because of that. And now as an adult, I have a passion for these sports as well.
That is very interesting.
Right on. That's really cool.
Yeah, you don't see it come from that direction very often. I mean, I do think video games at some point got so sophisticated that they were really good at teaching someone the rules and how things, work in a game. Like I'm not much of a hockey fan at all, but video games taught me like what icing was because it kept pissing me off. I'm like, why not though? I'm way up here and I'm about to score. Why are you mad? But it turns out you're not supposed to do offsides in hockey.
Yeah, you can't just dump puck down behind the goalie and then go chase. You can't do that.
Disappointing, I will say, but it did teach me some lessons. Yeah, I think that's very interesting, and you're an interesting guy for a number of reasons. And another question that I have to ask, and it wasn't even on my radar until you brought it up in our Discord prior to the interview. So obviously we brought you on here to chat about YouTube, video games, evidently baseball, but you did mention something that caught my attention. You were on a podcast with Topher Grace and Tig Notaro for a different skill set that you have. And, we're not going to put you on the spot too hard here, but tell us a little bit about what that was like.
Yeah. So if people don't know, I think I'm not like really, it's not secret, but I'm an auctioneer and I'm fairly well known. I've done a deal with Rhett and Link. I think they have a show called Good Mythical Morning, and I've done a movie, and I've also done that podcast that you're aware of. So yeah, I mean, it's I had no idea who these people were, and they called me up and wanted to fly me out. So I told them, sure, that would be fine. And they bought me a ticket and flew me out and had me on their show. Yeah, they were nice enough. I don't know if it's like, I'm more excited. I think I already told you this. I'm more excited to be on this show because it's like, it's what I know and it's what I'm passionate about than being on that show. It's like, I told my buddy, I have this guy, named Topher Grace. I have no idea who he is. He invited me out. He's on some show called The 70s Show. I don't really watch TV. And they're like, oh man, I know who that guy is. And then I was telling I have my friend Yahel from Wrestling with Gaming. I was telling him about this gal that was there that I met named Tig Notaro or whatever her name is. No clue who she was. And he's like, oh yeah, she's on Discovery, man. I'm like, oh yeah, well, I haven't seen that yet, but I guess I'm need to watch it because I like Star Trek. So I still haven't seen her come on the show yet, though. So yeah, I'm kind of clueless about these people, and I don't necessarily feel starstruck. They're just kind of just regular people doing their own deal, and that's fine. I've had some other offers I've bypassed, so it's really kind of, if things sound like they're interesting or they'd be fun, I go and accept those, and if they're not, then I try to bypass that stuff.
That's really interesting, though. And again, I know I don't want to harp on it too much because I know you're here to talk about games and YouTube. But I mean, how often do you find someone that has so many different skill sets? You got the retro games going on. You're a small time documentarian, and you can do some auctioneering, evidently at a world class degree. So that's pretty incredible.
Yeah, it's definitely not within expectations, I don't think, for a lot of people. I'll tell you, it definitely makes going to these retro conventions very interesting when they have auctions going on, just because of my background. They might not always be ran exactly how I think that they should be ran. So it's always interesting to sit in on some of these, especially when they have people that are running them that don't really know much about auctions, and that's my background. But they're having fun, and that's really all that matters. So yeah, it is interesting though to have people reach out to you on something like that and want you to be involved in some sort of project or hang out with you because you're doing this or that. And for me, like I said, it's I had there's a show called Storage Wars that reached out to me about 5 years ago maybe, and wanted to hire me on to be on the show, and I turned that deal down because it just doesn't sound like it was something that I would want to do, or it just, I like to do things on my own terms and not on somebody else's.
Sure.
It's like one of the big reasons I don't have a Patreon. I'm not against Patreon. I support a lot of people on Patreon, but I don't have a Patreon because I don't want to feel obligated to put out something that somebody else wants me to put out. I want to work on stuff that I'm passionate about and things that I want to explore at the pace that I feel is comfortable for me. And I think that like when you have a Patreon, a lot of times, then you are setting up expectations for yourself from other people that you might not be willing or able to fulfill. And yeah, I'm just not overly interested in that. I want everything to be on my terms because I want to do it, not because it's expected of me.
Oh, that hits home. I'm sorry. But anyway. No, that's really cool. I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you to do some auctioneer stuff.
Sure.
Some stuff, you know how it is when like Mike Judge goes on Conan or
yeah,
and he's got to do the Beavis and Butthead voices, and
I'm a little scratchy because I've been working in an arena, so it's been dusty. So I'm a little bit a little swollen in my throat right now, as you probably tell. But I will sure, I'll do that for you.
No, you're fine. You're fine.
There's definitely like two different styles, but I'm mainly livestock. So yeah, I'll just sell like I'm selling livestock. Okay, so yeah, so let's just say that we have something come into the arena and we're gonna sell $5, $5.50. I got $5.50 there. Gonna be $6. Gonna be $6.50. Gonna be $7. Gonna be $7. Gonna be $8. Gonna be $50. $9. Gonna be $9.50. Gonna be $10. I got $10 here. Gonna be $12. Gonna be $15. Gonna be $17. Gonna be $20. Gonna be $22. Gonna be $25. Gonna be $27. Gonna be $30 there. And $32. Gonna be $35. And $37. Now $40. Gonna be $42. Now $45. I got $45 there. Gonna be $50. I got $45 there. Gonna be $50. Now $55. I got $55 there. Gonna be $60. And that's the deal.
That was awesome.
That was brilliant. Oh my god, I loved it. Oh my god, dude. That's like, how do you learn? Okay, do you go to like auctioneer school?
Yeah,
like,
I mean, there is schools for that, but I actually apprenticed under some people that were very well known in the industry. I apprenticed under the head ring man for Barrett Jackson, not at Barrett Jackson, but I apprenticed under him at a livestock auction for a number of years. And yeah, so essentially I don't have like a degree doing it, but I work with industry leaders throughout a lot of my younger years, and just have grown in the industry just by being involved with it and constantly working sales as either a ring man, which would be somebody who's on the floor not actually selling but actually catching bids as they come in, and then the auctioneer.
That was tremendous. Yeah, that was that.
Thanks for doing that. I know I was like, man, I don't want to, because he's I heard it. You mentioned already that you were like, I'm just, I love talking about games. Those auctioneering podcasts, fine, but I'd rather talk about games. But in the back of my head, I'm like, how do I ask him to do it just for a minute?
I think it's very important that when we are doing things in life that we enjoy what we're doing and we find some sort of passion in it. And I know that's not always possible, especially when people are down on their luck, and sometimes you have to take jobs to be able to pay the bills. And but I think it's important that we make those things temporary, or try to enjoy them to the best of our ability if we can. And,
sure.
Yeah. So I mean, auctioneer work is something I'm very passionate about. I'm very passionate about the industry that I'm in, and the way that we are actually trying to. We're getting off video games here, but that's okay.
Totally fine.
I actually have kind of like a mission statement behind what we do, and that is actually trying to uplift small independent and medium-sized family farms, and trying to get families and individuals into the agricultural industry, and try to focus more on that and not at all on the big corporate scene. I'm kind of anti the big corporate farming, and I really want to see and promote the the individual actually understanding where their food is coming from, and how things are raised, and what is appropriate and what's not appropriate, and as far as the way that we actually treat our livestock, and what's appropriate and what's not appropriate as far as the way that we actually grow our food and where that comes from, because there's a lot of work that goes on behind the scenes to get that burger from the cow to your table, or to get that head of lettuce from the field to your table. And not always, in fact, I'll say probably more often than not, it's brought to your table in inhumane or unethical ways. And so my mission really in life, as far as through the industry I work in, is trying to uplift people and have them understand that there's another way. And everything doesn't need to be big corporate markets. I mean, there's obviously a need with the amount of people that we have in our nation, but it's critical that we understand that that there's other things going on behind the scenes, and that we have a say with our dollar.
We do. It's wonderful. I love that you're doing what you're doing.
Yeah. So Jenovi, as we close it out here, I know you just recently had a big move. You're trying to get closer to Alex. You're going from Oregon, I think down toward Arizona, and I know that's
Yeah, I'm right outside of Phoenix. So he's just like a stone's throw at this point if I had a really strong arm.
My goodness.
So I know that has
What
to be
is going
tough,
on?
and you don't have to get like too deep into specifics here, but I know obviously if you have a farm and you have a studio and a game collection, and how do you possibly move any of that stuff? That sounds like quite an ordeal.
Yeah, so I haven't fully moved everything, but it was a massive ordeal. And then we had these big forest fires that were going on in Oregon at the time, and yeah, and I still have the farm up there, but essentially I'm just selling everything off up there, and we're fully relocating here to Arizona. But yeah, I mean, part of the reason I moved to Arizona is that I'm starting up a new livestock facility out here, and that opens on the 7th of November. And that has obviously limited my time that I can invest in the channel and in my studio here and getting set up properly to do my show. I've still been doing the research and writing, though, just about every single night. I really try to spend a solid hour writing every single night for the show. And so I still have been able to do that. But I mean, as far as like being able to watch YouTube and a lot of the other things that I really enjoy in life, it's just been kind of on the back burner. Because these moves obviously are not simple, because it's just not like packing up a U-Haul van and moving to another city and then you have a job set up. That's not what I'm doing, and it's this is actually this is the first time I've moved in 15 years. So this is it's a little bit of a struggle, like emotionally and mentally, and just trying to get settled into a new area and open up a new business at the same time. And then I stress out about my channel and about doing my what I'm passionate about, which is making these videos. And yeah, it's it's going to be worth it in the end. I know it will, but I just wish that sometimes that maybe things just go back to normal for just a minute, and I can just sit back in my old studio and record myself and work on a video for 40 or 50 hours and get something up on YouTube and just feel the joy that comes with that.
Right on, man. I think we all empathize a little bit with let's get it all back to normal. But good luck through all that, because I know that's got to be a behemoth task, and I'm sure it's taxing in a lot of ways. So, and thanks for taking the time to come onto the show in the middle of all of that. We really do appreciate that. We have a couple of listener questions to close out on, if you don't mind here.
Yeah, man, I'm here for the long haul. So,
all right. First one here is from Patrick. But it's spelled Pachrick, Patrick, I guess. Have you tried the Trials of Mana remake? How do you feel about it compared to the original? And I'll go ahead and say I have not tried it, so I don't know.
Yeah, I've tried a little bit of it. It's fine. The remake is, it's a remake. Like, it's hard to say how you feel about it compared to the original. It's completely different from the ground up. It's like it feels like a completely different game entirely. So it's like, what do you say? It feels different. That's all I'll say. I guess my point is that there's not that much wrong with being a product of your time. You know what I mean? Yeah. Where it's like you're fine with being stuck in 1996. You don't need to be timeless. You can be 1996.
Yeah, actually, I think it's kind of...
and you can stay there.
I think it's a shame, actually, that video games have started going down the similar path of movies, where an overwhelming amount of resources are being dumped into remastering or remaking these games. And there's nothing wrong with these games in the first place. And I'm not so sure that that's something that for me, I'm willing to support under any condition. I mean, maybe if it was Mass Effect 1, 2, and 3 remastered, I would do that. But we're getting into these older games, though. I mean, that's what like really makes them special, is going back to the original hardware, holding the original controller, and having that original experience.
Yeah, I'm fine with the 96 edition of Trials of Mana. It's just I would rather play the original. Just because I'm kind of does it make me a snob? But
yeah, I mean, when you're remaking a game, what is the purpose behind it? Because if the game was already fine, then it feels like it's kind of like a lost effort, So it's like I kind of wish that some of the reimaginations and remakes were of games that had a lot of potential but fell flat. And we don't see that at all. It's like if a game had potential but fell flat because of execution, they just kind of never revisited it. And instead, it's like here's game XYZ, which sold a bajillion copies, and everybody played it and loved it. And we're just gonna screw around with that again and see if we can sell a bajillion more copies. And it's like, hey, why don't we like maybe remake Ernest Evans and see if we can actually make that a good game instead of these games that are it's like The World Ends. What's that game called?
The World Ends With You.
Yeah, I mean, how many freaking times have they remade that game? It's wild. It's like or it's remastered it, and a lot of times the remasters aren't as good as the original DS one. So it's, I think it's unfortunate in a lot of ways.
For me, a big one is Romancing Saga. They valiantly, I will say, tried to do a, what do you call it? An open world kind of a deal with Romancing Saga 2 and 3. And it just didn't, it was really awkward, and it just didn't work all that well. If you did those games proper, with a real open world, as opposed to a 16-bit open world, I think those have a chance of being something new and something fresh and something interesting. I think those should be remade. Trials of Mana, I might be in the minority saying that, but it's like,
Big resounding meh from the audience here today on Trials of Mana remake. Okay.
Well, hey, at least it feels like we're on the same page here so far.
Right on.
Our second question here is Brad from Brooklyn. He's back. He's Brad, and he's from Brooklyn.
This guy.
Yeah, this guy.
This guy.
He says, in the words of Van Halen, what discontinued drink do you wish you could have right now? That was the Van Halen thing. He offers up Crystal Pepsi's poisonous but well-advertised time on this earth was too short for him. I don't know. I'm not big into a lot of drinks that were discontinued. They've always made water. I've been a big fan of that. I think Surge was a drink I remember in middle school really, really liking.
Oh, God.
I don't know if it's good
that.
or not, but I would try it again.
Yeah, I believe that's back on the market unless he discontinues it again. Yeah.
2 discontinues. My gosh.
For me, it would be a drink from the early 90s, I believe. It was called Orbits.
Oh,
it was a fruity drink with a bunch of floaties in it.
Had the floaties.
Yeah.
I remember that.
I have no idea what you guys are talking about. You guys are on your own planet there.
You don't remember floaty drink? You could go to any service station, and it was always in the back. There were always there's like an inch thick of dust on it because no one bought it, but it would attract certain kids, and his
no idea
little floaty things in it.
Yeah, that was my jam until they discontinued it, and I was heartbroken.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. No, I have not heard of that ever. I remember having a sleepover at when I was like 9 years old at a friend's house, and we got like 2 huge 2 liters of Crystal Pepsi, and we rented what's it called, Populous and Out of This World for Super Nintendo, and you could not have gotten 2 more esoteric Super Nintendo games at the time, because it was just like, what the hell are these games? What do we even do?
Jeez.
And it's just like, I'll never forget that. Our first impressions of that game were just like, what the hell do you do? And, we were so confused. But, yeah, good times. But, I would say Crystal Pepsi. I didn't think Crystal Pepsi was that bad. I think it's just become kind of a meme.
Yeah.
That it's.
I mean, that's another one that they just relaunched here last year, I believe. And
oh no,
and,
really?
I mean,
no need for that.
it was very limited. I think I'm pretty sure I have a photo up of it somewhere on some social media page, but it was I don't know. It wasn't that great.
Yeah.
My goodness.
I actually never tried Crystal Pepsi, so if they did re-release it, I would hopefully I could get a chance to try it. But
oh yeah, you're gonna get in line for that. No, you know what I wish were relaunched were
Don't tell me Zima.
All the Zima? No, absolutely not. Zima's terrible. No, when I was in tech school in the early 2000s, me and a couple of friends of mine, we would always go down to Walmart and get the crappy store brand versions of stuff like Mountain Dew and Pepsi and all that sort of stuff.
Oh yeah, they're like a dime each down there. That was a steal of a deal back then.
Yeah, we would get, and they were called stuff like Mountain Lightning
Yeah.
and stuff like that. So we would get mountain lightning and like 2 cases of it, and it was like $8 for 2 cases of mountain lightning. It was so pathetic.
Yeah.
And it was just awful, terrible stuff. It was just like pure corn syrup.
Yeah.
So I want more mountain lightning. Bring that back.
Yeah, you got it was like Dr. Enough or something like Dr. Dude, or they always tried to riff on Dr. Pepper.
It really was like Dr. Dude or something like that. It was funny as hell. Yeah, it was some dumb name like that. Yeah.
All right. Well, I think that pretty much wraps up the episode. And again, Jenovi, thank you so much for taking a break from transitioning your entire life to come on and chat with us. We really appreciated it. And yeah, we look forward to more of your content as soon as you get settled in and ready to pump out some more for us.
Yeah, thank you. I really appreciate you having me on the show, and it was fantastic being able to chat with both of you after listening to so many episodes.
Yeah, right on, man. Please keep listening. We don't have too many folks listening, so
yeah, I am. I'm slightly disappointed that this next episode is going to be me. So when I'm out there working, I won't have something fresh to listen to. So I'm a little bit heartbroken because I look forward to these every single week.
Oh, that's good to hear. We'll record a good intro for you and try to make that at least worth the first 15 minutes.
Thank you. Yes, I look forward to that. Breaking the magic already here, pulling back the veil.
All right, everyone, that has been another Drunk Friend podcast. As always, you can reach out to us with questions or comments at drunkfriendpodcast@gmail.com. We might even read it out here on the show. Just ask Ryan and Austin. We totally did it. If you want to hear more podcasts from our crew, please check out polykill.com and poke around.
Hey, and if email isn't your thing, that's no big deal. But if you would still like to contribute a rating or review on our podcast app of your choice, that's still going to help us out. So help us out. What's wrong with you?
What is wrong with you? You can even find us on social media. On Twitter, I'm at Trav Plays Games. Alex is at SNES Drunk, and Jenovi is at Jenovi. That is Jenovi.
Yeah, don't listen to Trav. He can't spell. As always, we want to shout out the show's theme as composed by our friend Coolor. The track you hear is called Electric Starbounce, and you can find a link to more of his music on the Buzzsprout podcast page. Yes! Nailed it.
You got it.
We also want to thank Josh Lizzie for our thirst... I jinxed myself. Our thirst-quenching logo. Damn it!
Next time, man. There's always episode 33. Be sure to catch us on all the YouTubes, and thanks for listening.
And we hope you have a great rest of your day, except for Trav.
Cheers.